So I'm Valeria, and I'm responding to Angel's claim that states individuals who work more than 40 hours a week possess a negative effect to society, and those that work less than 40 hours a week are considered functioning members of society. The first thing that she did was her main proposition had two claims. One being that if you work over 40 hours, you're negative to society, and the other being that if you work less, you are considered functioning. She only really went on to explain the first one, so the second one was just kind of put there randomly. The three secondary claims that she used to support her primary claim was working over 40 hours a week leads to increased health problems, working overtime decreases the safety of others, and employers face high risk. To support her first secondary claim, she states that higher risk in injury and lower productivity among workers is common, but then in parentheses she adds that this contributes directly to healthcare costs. So there she completely undermines what she is proposing, that working overtime makes you a negative member of society, because she directly says that it's resulted through healthcare costs. Also stated in her first secondary claim, she says that working over 40 hours a week causes mental health issues. A study that I found on Fit for Work, the person studying says that mental illnesses like depression and anxiety are caused by the workplace itself, not the amount of work hours that are actually spent there. Also, her last supporting claim states the example that Asian countries have a norm to heavily drink at company dinners as a sign of respect. This is what she used to back the health problems. This statement itself is more of a cultural thing than actually relating it back to the amount of work hours that are actually spent, because here she directly says that it's shown as a sign of respect. In addition, I'd like to add an evaluation done by ITEC, which is a company that conducted a study that said that with their workers, that people who put in 60 hours or more a week and workers who work 40 hours or less a week had the same likeliness to report declines in mental and physical health, impaired performance on the job, and work-related injuries or illnesses. To support her second secondary claim that working overtime decreases the safety of others, she pretty much, her main thing was that a lot of medical mistakes are increased, and she didn't have any evidence for this. But with a little bit of research, it's clear that the average doctor works 59.6 hours a week, which is already over the 40 hours a week that she's saying, which, relating it back to her proposition, would mean that the average doctor isn't considered a functioning member of society. And in her last claim that employers face high risk, she states that there's a decrease in productivity when working over 40 hours a week, when an article found on clockspot.com states that there was a study held that showed that working 40 hours a week is actually just about right and actually maximizes productivity. And in addition to this productivity, could land workers more benefits and promotions and raises. Also, in her last supporting claim, she says that there's an increase in absenteeism, which is the practice of staying away from work for no reason. And I'd like to relate that to the United States, because we live here. It's a culture that it has a really tight labor market, so it's very hard to actually believe that people would actually do that, because a study also, a survey conducted by Forbes states that 50% of Americans actually work over 40 hours a week. And so therefore her proposition would be saying that 50% of the United States isn't considered functioning members of society. So yeah.
the evaluation rubric. Okay, you identified the claim at the beginning. You kind of give us an explanation of what the advocate's argument was. You lay out the secondary claims for us, so that's pretty straightforward. As you get to that first point, I think that you ask some reasonable questions about, what constitutes, the sort of risk that we're talking about. You basically suggest that some of the issues that are being presented are not really caused by the number of hours, but by something else. I did not really understand your argument about the health care costs. It sounded to me like it exactly duplicated the advocate's argument on this point. So that was a little bit confusing. I did think that your second argument was, second argument on that particular point made more sense, that the depression is about the workplace, not the number of hours that you're spending in the workplace. It would be nice to have some example of that or some other reason to believe that it's true, but at least you've got a conclusionary piece of information that supports that point. The argument that tries to diminish the advocate's example of drinking in Asian cultures, I thought that was the right answer. Look, this is a cultural issue that's got nothing to do with the number of hours that people work. And the last piece of information that you have on that first point is a good piece of information to finish this argument with, but you want to make a declarative statement about it. This is one of those places where sometimes people just have a tendency to read evidence instead of make the argument with it, and we're supposed to figure out what the argument is. And you've got a good piece of evidence that says almost exactly the opposite of that. There is no significant difference between people who work 60 hours a week or more and those who work 40 hours a week or more in terms of health or mental capabilities. Here's the evidence. It comes from ITech, blah, 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 blah. That's basically what your argument is, but you need to say it a little bit more forcefully. That's all it is. It's a delivery kind of issue. It's a presentation thing that you want to focus on. On the second point, you challenge the medical mistakes. I do like the kind of way that you premise a lot of these arguments here. If we're going to go by the notion that we're not functioning members of society, well, then no doctor is a functioning member of society. And later on, it says half of us are non-functioning members of society. Now, if we're having a debate, I think the advocate might come back and say, yeah, they're not functioning appropriately. They're functioning inappropriately, and that would be the answer. I like the way you present it, but I think there's an answer to it that is, equal to the point that you're making. I think you want another argument here that suggests that, doctors have to function in a variety of capacities. They seem to be pretty effective. There's no increase in the number of malpractice or something. You need some data like that addresses that particular issue. And then, the other issue about what I think you just go back to some of that argument that you made at the bottom of the first point. It says, look, there's no significant difference in the mental health of people who are working. That's the evidence that I presented. The only information that they have is not very clear in comparison to that. And half of us are working more than 40 hours a week. And you know what? We're doing okay. That kind of thing. All right. I know.